In the remote tribal lands of Jharkhand state, the lush landscape is nourished by the annual monsoon. These hills have made some Indians very rich. Nearly half of India's mineral wealth is found in this region. It's also home to some of India's poorest people, including those who live in the tiny village of Roro. But Roro lies in the shadow of a sinister presence.
For me, it was like in the middle of this green jungle and forest and all, and suddenly this almost like a snow-clad mountain that I saw from a distance, which kind of completely, shocked me.
High on the Roro hills, this lunar-like landscape cuts an ugly swathe through the forest. I'm walking with environmental scientist turned activist Madhumita Dutta across a toxic mix of tailings, asbestos and another cancer-causing mineral, chromite. To be safe here we need suits and masks, protection against the waste from a mine abandoned in 1983 by one of India's biggest corporations.
The children use this as a slippery slide, do they?
Yeah, it's like a playground. It's like a toxic playground.
They think that this place is so back of beyond, nobody would know about their criminal activity. But it's for everybody to see. The story needs to be told, This is a damning evidence about their irresponsibility, and it's criminal negligence.
Just below the mine sits Roro village. In the summer, the dust blows everywhere. This is not a healthy place. The mine was closed soon after India's first cases of asbestosis were identified among the villagers who worked there. Asbestosis is a disease that slowly chokes the lungs with fibres that can also trigger cancer decades later, including the most painful type, mesothelioma. The mining here stopped long ago, but those who were children then are now sick.
This lady here, she's saying that she has got chest pain and her back pains when she breathes, she coughs, and next to her this lady, she's complaining of the same problem.
The answer to the mysterious diseases that seem to haunt this place might lie in these tailings, which have washed down almost to the village. Without specialist medical expertise, diagnosis is difficult. I was taken to meet this man, too weak to leave his house. Sodan Sundi is only 36. His doctors have given up. They can't explain his condition and say there's nothing they can do.
He's been sick like this for a while, and the doctors in Chaibasa said he doesn't have TB, but they don't know what it is.
Here, industry calls it the poor man's roof, and it's absolutely everywhere. Asbestos bonded with cement into corrugated sheets. We know it as fibro. And I first began covering the story of its trail of death in Australia 30 years ago. Back home and in other developed countries, the problem now is how to get rid of it. But India, it seems, is racing headlong into repeating the same mistakes. only on a massive scale.
Have you ever heard that asbestos is bad for your lungs? No.
Ahmedabad lies in the centre of what's called the Golden Corridor, India's industrial heartland, where slums like these provide an endless supply of cheap labour for its factories. In their tiny home, Naren Meron's daughters earn a few much-needed rupees from sewing. Their father's too sick with asbestosis to work, and alarmingly so is their mother. He worked at the power station, where asbestos insulation was everywhere.
पूरा सब उड़ता था ना ऊपर, बाल सफ़ेद हो जाते थे, मट्टी उड़ता जैसे, फिर उसको निकाल के जड़ करना पड़ता था, फिर ज़मीन पे भी गिरता था.
His wife, Savita Daivai, would wash his dusty clothes. When she too became breathless, her husband accused her of malingering.
हम चुप बैठ जाते हैं, फिर रोते हैं, फिर रोने लग जाते हैं हम लोग. अब दवा भी कैसे ला रहे हम, पैसे नहीं हमारे पास. 2 दिन लाते हैं, 2 दिन फिर बैठ जाते हैं, खत्म हो जाती है कि दवा लाना है कि पैसे नहीं है.
पुतला बढ़ने का तो कोई सवाल ही नहीं होता. अब तो हमारा एंड आया है, सवाल ही नहीं है.
Steadily worsening asbestosis also fills the lungs of Muthuswamy Muniam. For 31 years he's worked at a local asbestos cement manufacturer, Gujarat Composite. He lives in extreme pain.
अभी भी सांस चढ़ता है, ज़्यादा किसी से बोलना होती भी सांस चढ़ता है.
There's no real doubt how he developed his condition. For decades, his workplace was covered with asbestos dust.
सबका वही काम, और पोरी डालने में सीमेंट का पोरी डालते हैं ना, काट के उसमें पूरा फैल जाता है, और उसमें क्या कचरा सब उड़ता है. उसको उन लोग भी ऐसे तकलीफ है, ज़्यादा तकलीफ है.
I want to find out more about this factory, so I go to see Raghunath Munwar.
Hello, how are you? Fine.
How are you?
Come on.
He's become a tireless campaigner for sick asbestos workers.
So, Raghu, what are these?
So his factory, Gujarat Composite Cement, established in 1963. All our worker victim exposure asbestos.
They all have asbestos in their lungs, but you don't know what's happened.
Yeah.
With no support or medical treatment, many victims simply return to their villages to die an unrecorded death. I ask Raghunath Munwar if he can take me to Gujarat Composite. But he's had death threats from union officials there who've accused him of jeopardising workers' jobs. This is as far as he'd go.
वर्कर का रोजी रोटी जाता है, तो हम बोला कि वर्कर का रोजी रोटी हम बंद नहीं कर रहे हैं, हम उसका हेल्थ के लिए चिंतित है.
So later I visit the factory myself. Gujarat Composite's been accused of not supplying its workers with masks and overalls, for not disclosing their medical records, nor paying them compensation.
Hi. Matt Peacock from Australian TV. Can we speak to the manager?
A quietly menacing crowd gathers while we wait. Eventually the personnel manager emerges and tells us no worker here has become sick from asbestos.
आज तक कोई भी केस डिटेक्ट नहीं हुआ।
No disease, no asbestosis. No?
Stop the camera, please. This is not the place. Come, stop the camera.
इनको अपन बात कर रहे हैं।
Suddenly the manager appears. He's less forthcoming.
Well,
Hello, sir.
we want to know if the factory is safe.
पागल आदमी है क्या? Stop. आपको Are you stupid?
हम तो पहली बार आए हैं।
Are you stupid or what? What do you want?
Just 2 questions.
Please stop it. चलो सब अंदर चलो। चलो भाई सब अंदर चलो इसको जो करता है। Call the police disturbing our atmosphere.
We learnt from that the personnel manager who was speaking to us said that there was no disease in that factory, which of course we know is a lie because we've spoken to people who are still working there with asbestosis diagnosed.
Tragically, the sick man we met earlier, Muthuswamy Munian, is one of them. But with a wife and 4 sons to feed, he feels he has no choice. He must keep working at the factory that's slowly killing him.
अभी कहाँ दूसरा नौकरी मिलेगा, अभी तो मिलना तो मुश्किल है। बस यही है, 2 साल बाकी है, करके बस।
It's here in his house, and there's now scarcely a street or village in India without asbestos sheeting. It's cheap, versatile, and lasts for decades. But most of what you see here doesn't even originate in India. 90% of it has been imported, much of it from a country that should know better. This is Canada's ugly secret. In the heartland of French-speaking Quebec, beneath this giant hole, mining of white asbestos or chrysotile continues underground. Canada doesn't want the asbestos for itself. In fact, it's spent millions clearing it from public buildings, including the nation's Parliament House. But what's unsafe in Canada, it seems, is still safe enough to export to India.
It amounts to Canada being a purveyor of death around the world. Our country is an exporter of a deadly substance, and we enjoy it. At least our federal government does. If Canada and our Prime Minister is prepared to make a quick buck by selling asbestos to people who don't know better, even though it'll kill them, I've got an idea. Why don't we get in the business of selling weapons to children around the world too? Guns.
Selling asbestos overseas is big business. The government's poured millions of dollars into a lobby group with its headquarters in this Montreal office block. The so-called Chrysotile Institute refused to speak to foreign correspondent. It peddles the message that asbestos can be used safely in the developing world, even though it clearly hasn't been in Canada.
The tobacco companies said smoking was fine. The asbestos companies say asbestos is fine. You don't need to be exceptionally well schooled in epidemiology or medicine or science or much of anything to know that it's not worth trusting them. There is absolutely no disease that affects workers more in Quebec than asbestos disease, mesothelioma. So it has killed hundreds, if not thousands, of people in Canada, particularly the miners, but in other industries too.
The mine managers won't allow us in to film. Asbestos has become a dirty word in the Western world, and the industry prefers to be discreet.
Asbestos fiber in here, a lot of asbestos fiber in here.
But this footage, shot in 2004, shows the operations in what's one of the most asbestos-rich regions of the world.
It's asbestos fiber is really a natural product.
Most of the asbestos from this mine is bound for India. The town's mayor, Luc Berthold, is convinced that the modern industry is now safe.
Si c'est utilisé d'une manière sécuritaire, si les gens en Inde respectent les conditions qu'on a mis en place ici pour utiliser les fibres de chrysotile, oui, c'est un bon produit, c'est un produit qui est avantageux.
The Canadian industry is even pushing to export more. It hopes to reopen another mine nearby in the aptly named town of Asbestos. Rusting vehicles are a reminder of the town's mining past. If mining does recommence here, it will more than triple Canadian production, as well as shore up crucial independent seats for the Prime Minister, Stephen Harper. He says in India asbestos is legal, so Canada's entitled to export there. But how can India be expected to exceed safety standards the rest of the world has never met? I still needed to see for myself just how safe workers here are. I've come to a place where Canadian asbestos was used, at least until recently. 2 years ago, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation filmed these scenes inside the Eagle Asbestos factory near Ahmedabad. It's a shocking sight. The workers are in a fog of carcinogenic dust, scooping up armfuls of raw asbestos fibre. No TV crew has set foot inside here since. I want to see if conditions have changed, but I don't get very far.
There's a gentleman here from the factory interrupting us. They're not happy about us filming.
At last, a breakthrough. After weeks of negotiations, the Indian Industry Association agrees to show me what they call a responsible factory. It's here in the bustling city of Hyderabad where the 16th century Muslim monument, the Charminar, still dominates the city centre. Charminar is also the trade name of Hyderabad Industries' top-selling asbestos cement sheets, which come pumping out of this and 7 smaller factories around India. This company is Canada's biggest customer. Its safety officers keen to show me how the bags of fibre are opened inside a sealed compartment, untouched by human hand.
There is no release of asbestos fibre into the working environment, and whatever the fibre is released, that's all sucked up by the dust control. It's sucked up.
Yet signs of dust are still visible. These masks that have been provided appear only for show, because they offer virtually no protection against the most dangerous fibres, which are so small they're like a gas.
So should I be wearing this now?
As a matter of extra precaution, you are welcome to wear the mask.
But you're not going to?
Because I know the evidence that the dust levels are very low.
But around the corner where we weren't supposed to look, a broken bag, and the broom tucked away in the shadows indicates the cleanup is not always with a vacuum cleaner. The company managing director, Apai Shankar, also heads the industry lobby that spruiks asbestos. He seems relaxed about the potential hazards.
This particular asbestos has not been known to give cancer so far.
So the World Health Organization, the ILO, the Australian government and however many, 50 other governments, they're all wrong?
They are wrong about chrysotile asbestos because they have banned asbestos when the blue asbestos, which is the dangerous kind, was being used, and that was giving them health problems because the Western worlds were using it irresponsibly.
But in his own factory, warnings on the bags of Canadian asbestos are clear about the risk that this asbestos can cause fatal diseases like cancer.
The argument that chrysotile asbestos is safer than other kinds of asbestos is the most scientifically ridiculous nonsense I've ever heard. It's like saying light cigarettes are safer than regular cigarettes. The idea that there is a safe amount of exposure for asbestos is a bit like saying there's a safe amount of exposure to getting shot by a revolver.
Asbestos is a booming business in India, and there's no sign of a slowdown. Backed by government concessions and subsidies, asbestos cement roofing is steadily displacing safer options like thatch, tiles or steel.
It's a poor man's roof, and the government cannot afford to deny the poor man a viable option.
If Western experience is any guide, it's these end users of asbestos cement who are also in danger. Yet according to Hyderabad Industries' do's and don'ts guide for its customers, there's absolutely no risk.
Let me read you the caution that you have on this pamphlet. Yes. Caution. Yes. Asbestos cement products present no known risk on health. Now that's not true, is it?
Yes, but
But that's not true. People have had their health affected.
This pamphlet is for people who live under asbestos roof sheeting.
And whom you're recommending cut with a saw.
Yes.
Making dust.
Yes, that's right. But we also recommend that you do it with water. You try and minimize the dust levels.
Where does it say that? It doesn't say that. It shows a photo of people cutting with a saw.
Yeah, but we go and train them on this thing. There are certain pamphlets, there are certain pieces of paper that we tell them how to use it responsibly.
Mr. Shankar told me Hyderabad Industries has always looked after the safety of its workers. But this is the same wealthy company that owned the mine at Roro, where our story began.
We have stopped mining asbestos fiber.
20 years ago?
Yes, that's right.
And you left the mine with mountains of tailings where children play? Did you not?
No, I think we've sufficiently covered them, and we've, as per the government requirement, we've left them the way they were supposed to.
The Indian industry continues to grow, aided and abetted by Canadian suppliers not prepared to use it themselves.
I mean, I think they're racist. You know, it's just it's such a double standard. The fear is you're going to see a huge spike in number of diseases in years to come, because this is also a disease which is a long latency period. So in 20 years' time, you will have a situation which may be epidemic situation.
In this population of more than 1 billion people, asbestos cement use is growing rapidly. One day these slums will be demolished, but the indestructible asbestos fibres will remain ever present. And they'll continue to kill. They are India's toxic time bomb.